Imagine your disabled daughter's only way to get around, her wheelchair, reduced to a pile of melted plastic and charred metal. Not by accident. Not by misfortune. But because of a spiteful, power-drunk woman from the HOA. A woman who thought her petty rules were more important than human decency. What she didn't know was that the tides had turned. Because I wasn't just any frustrated parent, I was the newly appointed county sheriff. And while she thought she could get away with tormenting my family, this time, justice wasn't just a concept, it had a badge, a uniform, and a reason to take her down. Welcome back to Voice of Tales, where real-life stories of revenge, justice, and satisfying karma come alive like never before. Whether it's an entitled neighbor, a power-tripping HOA, or someone who seriously underestimates the consequences of their actions, we bring you the moments where the underdog wins. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories where the good guys get the last word. Life in our quiet suburban neighborhood had always been calm and steady, just the way I liked it. Our home sat on a clean, tree-lined street where everyone seemed to mind their own business, and for the most part, things ran smoothly. I spent my mornings sipping coffee on the porch, listening to birds instead of sirens, and my evenings with family, enjoying dinners under the fading sky. It was the kind of life that made you feel safe, like the world slowed down just a little once you crossed into your driveway. That peace meant everything to me, especially for my daughter, who relied on a wheelchair and deserved every bit of security and comfort our home could offer. My daughter is the bravest soul I know. Despite being born with a physical disability that left her unable to walk, she's never let that define her spirit. Her wheelchair isn't just a tool, it's her freedom, her way of exploring the world, getting to school, rolling through the garden, and being part of life without limits. We made sure she had the best custom-fit chair, tailored to her needs, because for her, mobility means independence. Watching her grow, laugh, and move on her own terms has been one of the greatest joys of my life. That wheelchair represented more than movement, it represented dignity, strength, and possibility. So when someone destroyed it, they weren't just burning a piece of equipment, they were attacking her entire sense of freedom. When we first moved into the neighborhood, we came with nothing but good intentions. I'm a private person by nature, not one to stir trouble or step on anyone's toes. We were looking for a safe, quiet place to settle down where my daughter could thrive and we could live in peace. I've always believed in following the rules and respecting others' space. We introduced ourselves politely, kept our yard tidy, and made sure to be considerate neighbors. All we wanted was to quietly enjoy our new home and become part of the community. But unfortunately, not everyone shared that same respect, especially the HOA, and one particular woman who seemed to thrive on control and conflict. It didn't take long to notice that the HOA in our neighborhood had a reputation, and not a good one. They were infamous for being overly controlling, micromanaging everything from mailbox colors to the height of flower beds. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe they were just a little too passionate about community standards. But it quickly became clear that this HOA wasn't about maintaining order, it was about power. They thrived on intimidation and nitpicking, and if you didn't bend to their demands, they made your life difficult. It was like living under a petty dictatorship, with one woman, Karen, acting as their self-appointed enforcer. Then came Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She was the kind of person who always seemed to be peering through her blinds, ready to pounce on anything she deemed a violation. From the moment we moved in, she made her presence known, not with a warm welcome, but with passive-aggressive comments and unsolicited rulebooks. Karen was nosy, rude, and radiated entitlement like it was her full-time job. She acted like the neighborhood was her kingdom, and everyone else were peasants living under her rule. It wasn't long before we realized she didn't just enforce the rules, she lived for them, twisting them to suit her mood and stepping way over the line in the name of community standards. It started subtly, little comments here and there from Karen that, at first, I tried to brush off. She'd make snide remarks about the ramp we installed for my daughter, saying things like, "It's such an eyesore, don't you think?" Or, I hope that's up to code. She always framed her comments as if they were about maintaining the neighborhood aesthetic, but it was clear she had an issue with the accessibility features we added to our home. The modifications weren't flashy or excessive, just necessary. But to Karen, anything that didn't fit her rigid, outdated vision of perfection was a problem. It became obvious her remarks weren't just about appearances, they were personal. At first, I tried to take the high road. I brushed off Karen's passive-aggressive remarks, convincing myself it wasn't worth the confrontation. We were still new to the neighborhood, and I didn't want to start any drama. My priority was keeping things peaceful for my family, especially my daughter. I figured if we just followed the rules and stayed respectful, the noise would die down eventually. So, every time Karen gave me one of those fake smiles laced with judgment, I smiled back, swallowed my pride, and chose silence, hoping she'd eventually lose interest and move on. It didn't take long before the passive-aggressive comments turned into outright hostility. Karen began leaving nasty notes taped to our front door or mailbox, complaining about everything from the wheelchair ramp being an eyesore to our yard not meeting her so-called neighborhood standards. She even had the nerve to question the legitimacy of the disabled placards on our vehicle, suggesting they were being misused for convenient parking. It was outrageous. Each note was more demeaning than the last, dripping with entitlement and total disregard for what our family was going through. Still, I held back. I documented everything but said nothing, thinking this was just some power trip that would burn itself out. Little did she know, the fire she was starting wouldn't stay under control for long. As if things hadn't already gone too far, Karen took it up a notch by issuing an official HOA fine, claiming that my daughter's wheelchair and the ramp were unsightly medical equipment that violated the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. I was stunned. This wasn't just harassment, it was cruelty, plain and simple. She treated my daughter's basic right to mobility like it was an eyesore, something to be penalized instead of protected. It was heartless, and I knew right then, this wasn't just a neighbor issue anymore. It was personal. I tried to reason with her. I calmly explained that the wheelchair and ramp weren't just optional additions, they were medically necessary for my daughter's daily life. I even showed her documentation, hoping she'd show a sliver of compassion or at least basic human decency. But Karen didn't flinch. Her tone stayed icy, her expression smug. She dismissed everything I said like it didn't matter. To her, my daughter's mobility was just another violation to stamp out. That moment made it clear, this wasn't about rules. It was about control, and her complete lack of empathy. One quiet evening, after a long day, we left my daughter's wheelchair on the front porch like we always did. It was her backup chair, the one we used when she didn't need to go far, and we kept it there for easy access. It was parked carefully, covered, and completely out of the way. We never thought twice about it. After all, we lived in what was supposed to be a safe, quiet neighborhood. But that night would change everything, and show us just how far some people are willing to go in the name of petty power. By morning, what we found made my blood run cold. The wheelchair, my daughter's essential lifeline, was nothing but a twisted, blackened frame. It had been deliberately set on fire, right there on our porch. The plastic components had melted away, the metal scorched and warped beyond recognition. This wasn't an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. My heart broke seeing the look on my daughter's face, her independence, her dignity, reduced to ashes. But what whoever did this didn't know was that they just picked a fight with the wrong person. Later that day, I reviewed our home's security footage, hoping for any clue, and what I found left no room for doubt. The video clearly showed Karen, the self-righteous HOA president, lurking near our porch just after midnight. She looked around, crouched near the wheelchair, and struck a lighter. Within seconds, flames began to rise. And just like that, she turned and fled into the darkness. My hands shook as I watched her face light up in the glow of the fire, calm, deliberate, unforgivable. That was all the proof I needed. She didn't just cross a line, she torched it. When I told my daughter what happened, she was visibly shaken. That wheelchair wasn't just equipment, It was her freedom, her way of navigating the world with independence and dignity. Now it was a pile of melted metal and ash. She couldn't understand why someone would do something so cruel. And honestly, neither could I. My blood boiled with rage, not just as a father, but as someone who had tried everything to avoid conflict. But now, this wasn't about neighborhood rules or petty fines anymore. This was criminal. This was personal. And as the newly appointed county sheriff, I was done playing nice. Karen underestimated everything about me. To her, I was just another quiet dad, someone who'd roll over and take whatever punishment she dished out. She saw my calm nature as weakness, my respect for the rules as submission. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't just a father, I was the newly sworn-in county sheriff. And when she decided to cross the line from harassment into arson, she didn't just mess with a neighbor, she ignited a legal firestorm she couldn't put out. What Karen didn't know, and what would soon become her worst mistake, was that I had just been promoted to county sheriff. I hadn't broadcasted it around the neighborhood, preferring to keep my professional life separate from my personal one. But after what she did to my daughter's wheelchair, that line vanished. I now had the full authority of the law behind me, and I was ready to use every bit of it to make sure she faced the consequences. What started as petty harassment was now a criminal investigation, and I was leading it. Instead of confronting her in anger, I took a deep breath and let the law do what it was meant to, my way. As county sheriff, I initiated a formal investigation, filed the necessary reports, and followed every legal step with precision. I knew losing my temper would only give her ammunition. But what she didn't realize was that calm doesn't mean weak, it means calculated. With the evidence in hand and my badge backing me, justice wasn't just coming, it was coming by the book, and it had my name on it. I launched an official investigation through the sheriff's office, with full authority and protocol. The security footage was reviewed, evidence was logged, and witnesses in the neighborhood were quietly interviewed. There was no bias, no shortcuts, just the proper process carried out to the letter. Karen had no idea that her petty cruelty had crossed into felony territory. What she thought was just a mean-spirited act was now an active criminal case, and the law was closing in fast. I immediately began collecting every piece of evidence I could get my hands on. The security camera footage was crystal clear, Karen creeping onto our porch in the middle of the night, a can of accelerant in hand, and then the unmistakable flash of flames. But I didn't stop there. I spoke with several neighbors who'd witnessed her making rude remarks about my daughter, and a few even admitted they'd heard Karen ranting about unsightly medical junk ruining the neighborhood. I documented every passive-aggressive note she'd left, every baseless fine, every attempt to harass us. Bit by bit, I built a timeline of motive and premeditation, a rock-solid case that not even the most arrogant HOA president could wriggle out of. With all the evidence compiled, surveillance footage, witness statements, and a clear pattern of harassment, I took the case straight to the district attorney. Given the seriousness of the crime and Karen's blatant disregard for the law, it didn't take long. An arrest warrant was swiftly issued for felony arson, destruction of property, and endangering a disabled minor. The same woman who strutted through the neighborhood acting like she owned it was now officially a fugitive from justice. The moment that warrant was signed, everything shifted, because this time, she wasn't facing a neighbor. She was facing the county sheriff. Karen's arrogance evaporated the moment I pulled up to her perfectly manicured driveway, not as her quiet neighbor, but as the county sheriff in full uniform. Her face went pale when I stepped out of the squad car, warrant in hand. She stuttered, trying to play innocent, but it was too late. I read her rights, calmly and clearly, as the flashing lights reflected off her porch. She stood there stunned, unable to process that the man she had tried to bully and intimidate was the very person putting her in cuffs. It was poetic justice, served cold, legal, and unforgettable. Karen was officially arrested and charged with arson, destruction of essential medical equipment, and harassment under state and federal statutes. The fire marshal confirmed the cause, and the footage, combined with her long history of aggressive complaints, made the case airtight. Her smug attitude crumbled as the weight of the charges sank in. This wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. She had committed a serious crime against a disabled child, and now she was facing the full force of the law. And I made sure justice was done by the book. No favors, no mercy, just accountability. After Karen's arrest, the entire HOA was thrown into complete chaos. Board members scrambled to hold emergency meetings, issuing vague statements and doing everything they could to distance themselves from her actions. Suddenly, the woman they once backed with blind authority became a public embarrassment. Some tried to claim they had no idea about her vendetta, while others quietly resigned to avoid further scrutiny. The same HOA that once supported every ridiculous fine she issued was now pretending she'd never been their leader. But it was too late. Her actions had tainted their reputation, and the neighborhood had seen it all unfold. With the truth out in the open and the evidence undeniable, I was officially cleared of every ridiculous violation Karen had ever filed against me. No more fines, no more warnings, just a full and public dismissal of all her claims. Meanwhile, Karen wasn't so lucky. The charges she faced were serious: arson, destruction of essential medical equipment, harassment, each one carrying real weight. What she thought was just a petty power move turned into a criminal case that could very well ruin her life. Justice wasn't just served, it was served by the book, and this time, by someone who wore the badge. In the aftermath, there was at least one silver lining. My daughter received a brand new, state-of-the-art wheelchair. It was smoother, faster, and more comfortable than the one she had before. And the best part? A significant portion of the cost was covered by the penalties Karen was legally required to pay. That same HOA president who tried to strip my daughter of her independence ended up funding an upgrade to her freedom. Watching my little girl roll confidently across the driveway again, smiling from ear to ear, was the most satisfying moment of all. Karma doesn't miss, and sometimes it pays for high-end mobility too. After all the chaos, something surprising happened. The neighborhood became noticeably quieter. Without Karen patrolling the streets, nitpicking every detail, and stirring up unnecessary drama, people started to relax. Neighbors who used to avoid eye contact now waved. There were fewer complaint letters, no more aggressive HOA memos, and a sense of calm settled over the community. It felt like everyone could finally breathe again. Order had been restored, not through intimidation or conflict, but by standing firm for what was right, and showing that justice still has a place, even in suburbia. Now, things are different. The HOA board, once quick to send letters and assert control, suddenly became very cautious around me. They realized I wasn't just another homeowner to bully. I was the county sheriff, someone who knew the law inside and out, and wasn't afraid to stand up for what's right. Their tone changed. No more fines. No more veiled threats. Just silence, and maybe a little fear. But more than that, there was respect. They knew I wasn't out to cause trouble, but if pushed, I'd push back, legally, firmly, and effectively. Sometimes, the best revenge doesn't come from rage, it comes from the badge. Karen thought she could bully, control, and intimidate anyone who didn't fall in line with her narrow vision of the neighborhood. She believed she was untouchable, hiding behind her HOA title. But what she didn't count on was that I wasn't just another frustrated homeowner. I was the law. And when she set fire to my daughter's wheelchair, she didn't just cross a line, she lit a fire under the wrong person. Karen thought she was above the law, until the law showed up at her door. If you found this story powerful, smash that like button, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe to Voice of Tales for more epic real-life justice stories. Every week, we bring you tales where truth triumphs, bullies get humbled, and karma comes knocking in the most unexpected ways. Your support helps us share more of these jaw-dropping moments, where the good guys win, and power-hungry Karens learn the hard way that no one is above the law.